perhaps along your path of awakening. Following a significant spiritual realization or a personal crisis, you sensed a change. The illusion, the patterns, the noise became clear, and then silence descended. Initially, this felt potent, even liberating. However, gradually, that sense of purpose simply disappeared. The shift wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was a quiet fading. It felt as though your soul had muted the vibrancy of life and then simply forgotten to restore the sound. The drive to pursue goals evaporated, and a sense of apathy settled in. This wasn't a destructive recklessness, but rather a profound, quiet resignation. A persistent question began to surface. Why this numbness now, after finally perceiving the truth? A peculiar contradiction emerged, as we often anticipate spiritual awakening to spark a fervent passion within. But for so many, especially the deeply introspective types, the empaths, the seekers, it does the opposite. It empties us. I remember talking to a friend, super bright, spiritually attuned, obsessed with all the right books, Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. Then she had a massive awakening after a dark night of the soul. She got it. She said she saw through the illusion of identity, ego, chasing external success, and yet 2 months later, she was staring at her ceiling, barely able to get out of bed. She told me, "I used to cry over not achieving enough. Now I don't care whether I do anything at all. I thought awakening would light me up, not leave me like this." Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, hinted at this post-awakening fog years ago. He didn't talk in trendy spiritual terms, but he understood what happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. Jung said, enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That sounds beautiful until you realize what it means. Awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning of a psychological death, the death of who you thought you were. The structures that gave your life meaning, goals, careers, relationships, even your sense of time, all collapse. But here's the catch. Jung would point out, your ego isn't gone. It's confused. It lost its map. And without a new map, motivation disappears. So, it's not that you're depressed or lost motivation. You're just in limbo. You've woken up from something, but you haven't woken up into something else yet. But here's where it gets fascinating and deeply misunderstood. What you're feeling right now isn't failure. It's not depression or anxiety in the clinical sense. It's something ancient and sacred. Jung actually warned that our modern world avoids this phase at all costs. This sacred pause, this void, this in-between. He believed it was essential for true individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. But no one tells you about this part, do they? And that's exactly what we're going to unravel next. What's really happening in your psyche after awakening, and how this loss of motivation might be the biggest spiritual upgrade you've ever experienced if you understand it right. Before we continue, if you're someone who loves expanding your mind and exploring the deeper layers of life, make sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. This channel exists to make the invisible, visible, and support those navigating the weird and wild path of awakening. So if you've been floating in that post-awakening fog, wondering where your spark went, no, you're not crazy. You're going through a psychological shift most people can't name. A change so deep it doesn't just tweak your thinking, it reprograms your operating system. All the goals you used to chase, the to-do lists, the 5-year plans, the hustle culture playlists, they don't move you anymore. Not because you're failing, but because your motivation system itself is collapsing. And Carl Jung saw this coming long before it became a trending topic on social media. Let's break this down. For much of your life, your drive stemmed from your ego's need for validation. The you believed yourself to be sought approval, recognition, success, and love. This isn't inherently negative. It's a natural stage of human development. Jung termed this outward presentation the persona, the social mask we adopt to navigate the world. However, the awakening process often strips away this constructed identity. Suddenly, the need for external validation diminishes. The drive to win societal games fades as you perceive the nature of the game itself, revealing its often arbitrary rules. This shift can feel unsettling. Without the familiar mask, your old aspirations no longer resonate. They were crafted to fit a version of yourself that is dissolving. You might feel like an actor who has stepped off stage, unsure of their lines or purpose. This lack of motivation isn't a loss of inherent drive. Rather, you've outgrown the fuel that once propelled you. Carl Jung posited that our purpose transcends serving the ego. Instead, we are meant to integrate it, aligning it with a more expansive sense of self. He called this journey individuation, the process of moving from a fragmented sense of identity toward a unified whole. This whole self isn't driven by the ego's craving for praise, but by a transcendent, soul-level core that connects you to all things. This deeper self is not concerned with status, approval, or even conventional clarity. Its primary impulse is to express truth. Consequently, once awakening occurs, your psyche begins a recalibration, naturally rejecting anything that feels inauthentic, forced, or rooted solely in egoic needs. This can extend to your career, relationships, ambitions, and even long-held aspirations. This is why awakening is often described as both liberating and deeply unsettling. However, Jung cautioned that stagnation follows if we remain in this initial phase. Some who awaken fall into spiritual bypassing, falsely believing that nothing truly matters and that all is merely illusion. Consequently, they detach, drift, and become emotionally numb, mistaking disengagement for true detachment. Yet, the authentic self yearns for something more. It seeks to manifest through you, to infuse the earthly realm with the divine. It doesn't reject the world, but rather redefines your purpose within it. Stepping into this new way of being necessitates traversing a unique in-between period, one that Jung keenly observed, yet is often unacknowledged by those within it. This post-awakening transition is seldom talked about, devoid of the captivating allure of spiritual celebrity and the instant gratification of social media approval. It doesn't mirror idyllic meditation getaways or impactful online declarations. Instead, it frequently appears as a profound inner quietude, a struggle to verbalize one's internal experience as the external world maintains its relentless forward momentum. In this condition, Carl Jung would contend that you are not adrift, but rather occupying a threshold, a liminal space. You've broken free from your primary identification with the ego's constructs, yet you haven't fully realized how to live genuinely from your more profound, authentic self. This temporary phase is not a setback, but an essential initiation. However, our relentlessly productive society often misinterprets this necessary stillness as indolence and equates pause with paralysis, leading to self-judgment. This self-criticism, in turn, obstructs the very vital energy that your soul is attempting to reclaim. Jung identified this essential psychological pause as enantrodromia, a process where things naturally transform into their opposites. Upon awakening, your internal compass swings from ego-driven ambition to a profound soul-level stillness. The imperative "I must do everything" shifts to a contemplative "why do anything?" This oscillation is sacred, serving as the mechanism for restoring inner equilibrium. In mythology and ancient wisdom, this corresponds to the hermit phase, a symbolic death preceding rebirth. This process mirrors the caterpillar's transformation within the chrysalis, where its former form dissolves, and it exists as neither the past creature nor the future butterfly, a state of transformative potential, a kind of goo. This goo phase isn't about achievement or effort, it's about breaking down old structures. It's at this very point that the ego often feels threatened, desperately seeking activity, a solid sense of self, and a clear path forward. However, the deeper self offers a contrasting directive: surrender, trust the unfolding. I am creating something far more significant. It is here that much of modern spirituality tends to bypass the more challenging aspects of this transformation, often advocating simplistic approaches like just follow your joy or maintain high vibrations only. While intention and energy are undoubtedly significant, Carl Jung would emphasize that avoiding the darkness inevitably means missing the potential for profound inner transformation. He considered shadow integration, the courageous act of confronting and integrating the repressed, uncomfortable aspects of oneself, as indispensable for achieving wholeness. It's not an optional add-on, but a fundamental aspect of the human soul's journey. This sacred void you experience allows the unconscious mind the necessary space to surface and be acknowledged. You are not failing. You are undergoing a crucial psychological and spiritual metabolism. Your psyche, in its innate wisdom, will deliberately stall your former motivations, drives, and even your access to conventional clarity of purpose. This forces you to feel, witness, and ultimately reclaim the disowned parts of yourself. This is the true inner work. And here lies the profound and beautiful paradox. When you cease resisting this void, something remarkable begins to occur. Motivation gradually returns, but with a distinctly different quality. It lacks the anxiety and performative drive of the ego. It's not fueled by external validation or relentless striving. Instead, it emerges as something ancient and quiet, a form of soul-led movement that feels more like a deep remembering than a frantic chase. Jung termed this the emergence of the self, not merely as an intellectual concept, but as a vibrant, living inner compass. Awakening often brings a paradoxical experience of liberation and disorientation. Jung cautioned, however, that lingering in this initial stage leads to stagnation. Some individuals, upon awakening, succumb to spiritual bypassing, convincing themselves of the ultimate insignificance of everything, that all is merely illusion. This can result in detachment, a sense of floating through life, and emotional numbing, where disengagement is mistaken for true detachment. Yet the deeper self harbors a different aspiration. It seeks to express itself through you, to infuse the earthly realm with a sense of the sacred. It doesn't negate the world but rather redefines your purpose and engagement within it. Embracing this evolved understanding requires traversing a unique transitional period, one that Jung keenly articulated but which often goes unnoticed by those undergoing it. This phase following awakening is seldom lauded or even openly acknowledged. It lacks the superficial appeal of spiritual stardom and the instant approval sought on social platforms. It doesn't usually involve idyllic spiritual getaways or impactful online declarations. Instead, it frequently manifests as a profound inner quietude, a feeling of being unable to fully express one's internal state while the external world relentlessly pushes forward. In these moments, Carl Jung would affirm that you are not adrift but rather inhabiting a threshold, a liminal space. You've started to detach from the ego's framework but haven't yet fully found a new way of living that springs from your genuine self. This intermediary space isn't a mark of inadequacy, but an essential initiation in the process of becoming whole. However, a relentlessly productivity-driven society often misinterprets this essential stillness as mere laziness and equates a necessary pause with unproductive paralysis. Consequently, individuals in this phase often subject themselves to harsh self-judgment. This self-criticism, in turn, actively obstructs the very vital energy that the soul is attempting to reclaim and integrate. Jung identified this crucial psychological pause with the term enantiodromia, describing a natural process where things inevitably turn into their opposite. Upon awakening, the individual's internal pendulum swings from a state of ego-driven striving and ambition to a profound and often unfamiliar state of soul-level stillness and contemplation. The former imperative of "I must do everything" gives way to a questioning "Why do anything?" This seemingly paradoxical swing is not a setback, but a sacred mechanism through which inner balance is ultimately restored. In numerous myths and ancient spiritual teachings, this phase corresponds to the archetype of the hermit, a symbolic death or withdrawal that precedes a significant rebirth or renewal. It's akin to the transformative stage where a caterpillar dissolves within its cocoon, no longer the creature it once was, but not yet the butterfly it is destined to become, existing in a state of formless potential, a kind of goo. This goo state is not characterized by external productivity or relentless striving. Its primary function is dissolution and inner reorganization. It is precisely at this juncture that the ego, which thrives on action, defined identity, and clear direction, often experiences panic and resistance. Yet the deeper self whispers a contrary directive: let go, trust the process. I am building something far more profound within. At this pivotal point, contemporary spirituality, in its eagerness for immediate positive outcomes, often inadvertently overlooks the more demanding yet fundamentally crucial phases of inner transformation. Oversimplified instructions like "just follow your joy" or "maintain high vibrations only" can unintentionally lead individuals to sidestep essential inner work. However, Carl Jung strongly warned that attempting to bypass the shadow aspects of oneself inevitably means missing the profound wisdom and potential that lie within. He firmly believed that shadow integration, the courageous and often uncomfortable process of consciously confronting and integrating the repressed, disowned, and uncomfortable parts of ourselves, is not merely an elective practice, but an absolutely indispensable prerequisite for achieving genuine psychological and spiritual wholeness. This seemingly unproductive and even unsettling sacred nothingness, that one may experience following awakening is precisely the fertile ground where the unconscious mind finally gains the necessary space and quietude to allow its contents to surface for conscious awareness and integration. Therefore, the apparent absence of motivation or drive during this period is not a personal failing, but rather a significant indication that a deep and necessary process of psychological and spiritual metabolization is actively taking place. The psyche, with its inherent wisdom, will often deliberately slow down the individual's former ego-driven motivations, ambitions, and even their access to conventional clarity of purpose. This temporary deceleration serves a vital function. It compels the individual to turn inward, to deeply feel their experiences, consciously witness their inner landscape, and ultimately reclaim the disowned and buried aspects of themselves. This introspective and often challenging process constitutes the genuine and necessary work of post-awakening integration. And here lies the profound and often counterintuitive truth. When one ceases to resist this seemingly unproductive void and instead learns to surrender to its inherent wisdom, something remarkable and transformative begins to unfold. Motivation does eventually return, but it manifests with a distinctly different quality and source. It is no longer fueled by the anxieties of the ego or the need for external validation and performative action. Instead, it emerges from a deeper, more authentic place within something ancient, quiet, and intrinsically aligned with the soul's true purpose. This new form of motivation is not a frantic chase, but rather a gentle, soul-led movement that feels more like a profound remembering of one's true nature and calling. Jung aptly termed this profound shift the emergence of the self, not as a mere intellectual concept or abstract idea, but as the awakening of a vibrant, living inner compass that guides one's life from a place of wholeness and authenticity. Your opinions matter. Feel free to like, share this video if you feel connected, and share your thoughts in the comments.